everyone, it's Matt. This is Big League Small Talk, where we talk about anything Major League Baseball. All right, leading off, we have to talk about the epic Bryce Eldridge walk-off grand slam. Now, this wasn't just significant historically for him personally, it was also a crazy comeback for the team. So the San Francisco Giants were down 9-1 against the Nationals in the eighth inning. They had a big game from several guys. Matt Chapman had a couple home runs, a double. Jung Hoo Lee had a couple of hits to extend his crazy hitting streak where he's hitting 500 or 600, just hitting everything hard. But the big moment belonged to 21-year-old Bryce Eldridge, one of the top prospects in the game, maybe the biggest power hitting prospect. Came up with the bases loaded in the ninth inning and hit a huge walk-off grand slam to cap off their huge comeback. So at 21 years old, he is the youngest player to hit a walk-off grand slam in Major League history. The previous youngest was a little bit older 21-year-old Roberto Clemente, Hall of Famer. Back in 1956, he hit an inside-the-park walk-off grand slam. So pretty crazy there. And then for the team, this was huge. They didn't even have a comeback this year of no matter what the score was after the sixth inning. So them being down 9-1 in the eighth inning, if you go over the last 20 seasons, any team in the league trailing by 8 or more runs after the seventh inning was 1 and 3,090. So that number is now 2 and 3,090. And if you want to go even further than that, teams down 8 or more in the eighth inning or later had lost 4,291 consecutive games. So pretty epic comeback. We'll see if that can spark something for the Giants, who have a lot of talent on that roster, but they've been underperforming. Like I mentioned, they haven't had any comebacks until that one. Let's see if that can spark something for them before Buster Posey has to make some decisions leading up to the trade deadline. So, Bryce Eldridge, how does this catapult him into the Rookie of the Year race? I think it definitely puts him more on the national stage. He doesn't have as many games played as some of the leaders. He has about half the amount of games played, and that's tough, but he wasn't getting consistent playing time when he first got called up. I think there was a little bit of disconnect between what the front office wanted and what the manager was doing, but they appear to be on the same page now, and he's in the lineup every day now, producing right in the middle of that lineup and putting up big numbers for them. Like I said, some of the leaders right now have double the amount of games played. You have J.J. Weatherholt in St. Louis playing good defense at second base, putting up a solid batting line. They're in contention for the division right now. If they keep that up, he's definitely someone to talk about. You also, in that NL Central, have Sal Stewart with Cincinnati. He started off scorching hot, hitting a ton of home runs. He's playing in a hitter's ballpark. That definitely helps him. He hits a lot to right center, which is a hot zone in that ballpark. However, he's tapered off month by month. So we'll see if he can stabilize that. I expect each of these guys to go through some growing pains and some rough patches as the league adjusts to them. And it's really just like any other player who can make the adjustment back. You have another NL Central guy, Connor Griffin. He's also very young, like Bryce Eldridge. He was the number 1 overall prospect coming into the season. He's very impressive, has a lot of speed that he's already put on display, stealing a lot of bases. He has power. We'll see how much he can tap into that this season. That could be the deciding factor for him. He plays good defense at shortstop. And then Bryce Eldridge, I've already talked about some. He's starting to put together some home runs. His on-base percentage is high. He's hitting for a high average. And he's also walking a lot, which he was known to have a very good eye in the minor leagues. His strikeout rate was on the higher side. We have not seen that in the major leagues. I would expect it to go up a little. But from what I've seen with the eye test, he is, after his first week or two in the league, he started just taking tough pitches, forcing pitchers to come into the strike zone to him, and he's just punishing the ball to all fields. You do have a pitcher to talk about. That's Nolan McLean with the New York Mets. He's someone that a lot of people were maybe expecting to win this award coming into the season, because we saw him come up at the end of last year. I think he went 5-1 with a 2.06 ERA. Really good stuff. Plays with the New York Mets. That's a big market. East Coast team, definitely an advantage. But he's had some rocky starts this year. His ERA is sitting around 4, but he definitely has the talent and the time to turn it around and put his name more towards the top of that list. I think that's kind of it for right now for the National League. In the American League, you have a ton of contenders. Out of the gate, we have Munetaka Murakami, the Japanese rookie. He did play professional ball in Japan, but he is still considered a rookie for the MLB. He came out with 20 home runs. Everybody knew he had big power, but he also had a lot of swing and miss in his game. A lot of people weren't sure how it would translate. He signed a bit of a smaller prove it deal with the White Sox, but 20 home runs out of the gate, very impressive. However, he's currently out with a hamstring injury. They're saying he's out until at least the end of June, and if he's out any longer than that, with so many other guys are playing, that could take him out of the race entirely. You have Kevin McGonigal up in Detroit putting up really good numbers, hitting around 300, really leading that lineup. Someone that a lot of people might not be familiar with, a left-handed pitcher in Cleveland, Parker Messick. He is leading all rookies, I believe, in innings pitched, strikeouts. He has a 2.68 ERA. Cleveland is in the playoff race as well. And Cleveland really knows how to develop starting pitchers, so there's no reason to think he can't keep up a really good season. And then, kind of like I talked about with Bryce Eldridge, you have a tier of guys that are doing well, have a ton of talent, but whether it was injuries or a late call-up, they don't quite have the same amount of time played at this point in the season. You have Travis Bazzana, a former number 1 overall pick, called up a little late. Started off a little rough, as you might expect, but he can really hit, and you're starting to see him put that together. He's starting to put up some better numbers. He's definitely someone that'll be talked about. Another pitcher, Peyton Tolley in Boston, good numbers, doesn't quite have the innings yet, but everyone expects him to stay in the rotation and keep building those stats. And then someone that everyone saw just put on an impressive display last year in the playoffs, Trey Savage with the Blue Jays. He pitched all the way into the World Series with dominant starts. He had an injury, so he doesn't quite have the innings, but his numbers look good. We know he has an absolutely devastating splitter, good arsenal. I definitely expect to hear more noise from him as the season goes on. All right. Now we have to talk about probably the best pitching performance of the season so far. Could end up being the best one all season. Jacob Misiorowski, super impressive. Not a rookie. He lost his eligibility last year, but Jacob Misiorowski with the Brewers just threw a complete game, 1-hit shutout with 15 strikeouts against the Phillies. He set the record for fastest strikeout pitch since they started tracking a few years ago with StatCast. I believe it was close to 105 miles per hour. And it just looked like those Phillies hitters, and there's a lot of good veteran hitters in that lineup. They just didn't even have a chance. The stuff was overwhelming. So if he can keep harnessing that stuff, he's pretty unstoppable. I think it's fair to say he's easily the leader in the clubhouse right now for the National League Cy Young. And over his last 8 starts, I think he has a .17 ERA. And not surprising to learn that that is the lowest ERA over an 8-start stretch since they started tracking earned runs in 1913. So that segues us into our history of the game segment. Today, in 2012, Matt Cain threw the 22nd perfect game in Major League history against the Houston Astros. They were at home in Oracle Park, and you had a couple incredible plays. I mean, first of all, he had the high fastball working. That was kind of one of his signature pitches. He threw that high 4-seamer, had a lot of deception, and he could work his big curveball off of that high fastball. Had guys swinging and missing all night. I think he had 14 strikeouts, so it wasn't a fluke. And then in the 8th inning, you had Gregor Blanco, who also plays center field, but we had him playing right field then. And right field in that ballpark is just as tough as any center field. But there was a line drive hit out into right center field. Gregor Blanco wasn't even in the camera frame, and everybody thought it was a hit. It was over. And then he just came out of nowhere at the last second with a Superman dive, completely laid out, and made a ridiculous catch. And I think at that point, everyone thought, hey, this has to happen now. This is too incredible. And then the very last out of the game had everyone super nervous. It was a weird little ground ball to third base, had a ton of weird spin on it. It sent utility infielder Joaquin Arias. It kind of made him stumble backwards as he fielded it, made everybody nervous, but then he fired a missile to first base to finish it off. And so that is a pretty great history of the game moment from modern history for today.